All right, we'll put a bow on this Sixers season. Paul Hudrick has been there the entire way for 97.3 ESPN.com. And, of course, we expected to be talking about game number 2 tonight, man. It wasn't meant to be. Yesterday, there was some news, as Woj reported, that the two sides, Ben Simmons and Clutch Sport, met with the Sixers. Read the tea leaves on that, Paul. What do you read from that meeting in Chicago?
So to me, I think it's a couple different things. One, I think from like Rich Paul's perspective and Clutch's perspective, it's a way to kind of try to spin this back into Ben's. Because let's be real, the 29 other GMs that could be talking to the Sixers, their last taste of Ben Simmons isn't a great one. So I take part of that as Rich Paul and Clutch really trying to build Ben back up and show that he does have value and that teams would want him if there was a trade market to open up. And if you're the Sixers, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to, be on the same page as Ben, whether it's be on the same page to keep him and try to, help him improve and work on his shooting, whatever, or to kind of help smooth things along in a situation where maybe you find the team that really wants Ben and will give you the best compensation. So, I think it's a situation that doesn't hurt. I wouldn't be alarmed by it either way, no matter what outcome you're hoping for. I think it's just people doing due diligence, people, wanting to be on the same page. And I think that's where we're at. I don't think, I wouldn't read too far into it in either direction, personally.
All right. There's a lot of people would say he's got a contract. He doesn't need an extension. Two sides are meeting here. That would typically say that you are headed towards a split, no?
Perhaps, or it could just be the discussions. I mean, we saw your own Weitzman's article, the kind of disconnect that was there between Clutch and the Sixers a few years ago with Ben and the shooting coach and then going with his brother to get some coaching in the offseason. So it could just be that. Maybe they're trying to get on the same page of, well, what do we both think is the best move for Ben as far as, the coaching he could receive, the training he could receive this offseason. But I'm sure everything's on the table, Mike. I'm sure, that, we talked about before, if there's a very good offer for Ben Simmons, the Sixers, Daryl Morey's going to listen. That's just the way I think literally any player on the roster that's not named Joel Embiid, you're going to listen at this point. So I think it's just them all trying to have an understanding of what's best for the Sixers, what's best for Ben Simmons, and then where are we in the middle. So I'm sure, the idea of a trade was discussed. I mean, we can't be naive to think it wasn't, but I'm not going to look too far into it just because it's so preliminary, and I don't see anything wrong with a team and an agent and player wanting to all be on the same page.
Let me ask you this. If the Sixers present to Ben, look, we want you here. We want to build around you. We want to keep doing this. However, you have to stay in Philadelphia and work with our team. We've allowed you to do what you want, and you've come back, and unfortunately, you can admit this, Ben, so can we. It hasn't worked. If you do not stay in Philadelphia, we are now going to have to explore trading you. Is that a fair possibility?
I don't think it would be over that. What I think all along is Daryl Morey is a really smart guy. When you look back on his trades, there's not many bad ones. I'm sure there's a few, but for the most part, and most of his trades are big moves to help a team get better and, accelerate the timeline of wanting to compete. So I don't see a deal where the Sixers are just going to flat out say, oh, we're going to trade you if you don't do X. I think it's all going to come back to value. It's going to matter what they can get. Because, Mike, the worst case scenario is not even the worst case scenario, but one of the, if you don't trade him, you go with him in the next season, and at least in the regular season, he'll be better than he was the last time we saw him. So at the very worst, you're showcasing him again for teams and reminding them of what made him a 3-time All-Star, what made him second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, what made him at once upon a time the Rookie of the Year. I don't see that as a bad thing. So to me, it's not. I don't think there's going to be any kind of ultimatums or anything like that. I think they would all like to be on the same page for sure. But yeah, it's not. They're going to trade him if they can get the proper value and get the right players that fit along with Joel Embiid, not because of something that Ben does or doesn't do. At least that's my feel of it.
Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Paul Hudrick. Now, Paul, the Phillies are in this situation where they have a no farm system, untradeable guys, and guys that you can trade, you're not going to get a lot of value back. How do you look at the Sixers roster in terms of utilizing it to improve your current team?
I actually think from that standpoint, they're in pretty tremendous shape when you think about it. Think about we don't know this. There's obviously been whispers about Dame Lillard and what he wants, and maybe he's getting antsy, whatever. How many teams can offer Dame Lillard the opportunity to be on a contender immediately, and B, that the team that they're going to trade into is going to have decent assets to give back to Portland? Because if you're Portland, and I don't know, you get Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey. Sure, that's not Dame Lillard, but that's a pretty good start to kind of start over. And I mean, probably a draft pick or two in there, you would imagine, for a player of Dame's caliber. But my point is, I think the Sixers are in a really good spot because you have Ben, you have a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who I'm sure a lot of fans would not be thrilled to want to give up. But if you're talking about a talent like a Dame Lillard or someone like that, you pull the trigger. But yeah, or even like a Matisse Thybulle. I mean, that's a guy who is second team all defense playing 20 minutes a night. I'm sure there are plenty of teams. Again, a team like Portland that wants to improve their defense to get a guy like that. I just think they're from the combination of being on a contender. So a good player would want to come here to compete and try to win a championship with Joel Embiid. You mix that in with a couple decent assets, and yeah, I think they're, compared to a lot of the other contenders in the league, they're in a pretty advantageous spot, I would say.
In your mind, Paul, how do you view Maxey? Is he a starting player who can play 30-plus minutes? Is he a spark plug off the bench? Because, as you mentioned, Morey seemed to indicate, I think you mentioned, that, hey, we have a guy that can dribble, penetrate off the dribble and produce. He's already on our roster in Maxey. So what do you see as Maxey's ultimate role?
I think he's absolutely going to be a starter in this league, and I think he can be a starter for the Sixers next year. I don't know. I don't know about next year. A lot of it, Mike, is going to depend on his shot. I mean, and this is like, when I say that, I don't like, he doesn't need to be like 40%. If he can just be like league average, be like 35%, and take them when they're there, he's got a shot to be really, really good. And then you couple that in with, the growth we've already seen with his ability to get all the way to the basket, his ability to, draw more contact and absorb that contact and finish through it. The mid-range game is there. The defensive improvement was exponential this year, and I imagine he's going to get better. He's 6'3", but he's got real long arms. He's quick. He's hungry. He's motivated to play on that end. So I think he's got a shot to be a decent two-way player. So to me, I would be stunned if his career doesn't wind up with him being a regular starter on an NBA team, and a pretty darn good one. I don't know where the ceiling is, but I think the floor is absolutely a starter and a regular contributor.
All right, so if you have Maxey and he's a starter, can him and Ben Simmons coexist?
If Maxey can, again, hit like league average, and Ben Simmons can just, show some willingness to maybe get to the rim more, I think it could help Ben, because I think what it can do is just alleviate some of the pressure that Ben doesn't have to be like, the quote unquote point guard. I think that's something that's kind of been thrown around there a little bit. The Sixers were pretty non-committal, whether it was Doc Rivers or whether it was Daryl Morey, about, switching Ben to a more traditional four role. Brett Brown had done that before Brett Brown was let go, and I kind of thought that was the right path. Putting him more of a four that can, listen, if the ball comes off the rim and he grabs it, he's not going to stop and find a guard. He can still dribble and start the transition and start the break. But if it's in a half-court set, give the ball to Maxey, set it up, and become a screener and a roller. I think he could really, really succeed in a role like that. So I thought, honestly, I don't want to keep piling on Doc Rivers with some of his decisions, but I think Doc could have utilized that much more with him as a screener and a roller, and not just kind of leave Ben in the dunker spot to kind of just sit there. So yeah, I do think that there is definitely a path to Maxey and Simmons making sense. With the Sixers timeline and with Joel Embiid, I'm not sure that next year is the year that maybe you want to do that and rely on that. But certainly down the line, I could see that being a very comparable matchup or partnership with those two.
Yeah, I actually brought this up earlier. See what you think. I mean, you're watching what's going on with Trae Young and Collins right now. If Ben could be the hard, screen and roller, Maxey has that floater in his game. What's to say he can't come streaking down the middle, throw that thing up, and you see Ben on the other end of a lot of those alley-oop dunks?
No, there's nothing. And then not only, I mean, with all due respect to John Collins, I mean, Ben is, I don't even put a number on it, but he's a much better defensive player than John Collins. So, yeah, if he could be that guy who is a screener, roller, he's a very good, Ben, too, like offensive rebounder. He kind of gets overlooked in that regard, and a very good defensive rebounder for that matter. But, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Ben kind of can't fill that similar role. And, you don't want to compare Maxey directly to a guy like Trae Young, but he is really quick. He's dynamic. He's fast. He's explosive at the rim. Again, to me, there's no reason why those two can't make a really formidable duo on a pick and roll. If they get the opportunity to kind of develop that chemistry. If the Sixers make no moves, Mike, I mean, that might be their best bet is to make Maxey a starter and to try to utilize him that way and to try to put, Ben in pick and rolls and then Seth Curry's the other guard and just kind of see what you can do with those guys. I don't think that would be, if they do nothing else, I don't think that would be the worst strategy in the world.
I know Danny Green suggested that Doc Rivers said, you're back here, don't worry about it. But is that definitive in your mind?
Not at all. It would require Danny Green to probably take the, some kind of a mid-level exception. Like it's not going to be, he just got done a 2-year, $30 million contract. Granted, he's older, he's a little banged up, but I don't know. I guess a lot of it's going to depend like on the market and what other teams are willing to pay. If he doesn't really have a robust market, sure, maybe he comes back on a some kind of taxpayer mid-level, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because I think Danny Green helped them on the court, but he really helped them off the court. I thought more than anything, and just his leadership and how big he was, kind of holding guys accountable. So if there's an opportunity for that, I'd be open to it. I don't know if I'd want to bring back the same exact starting five, meaning I might want to bring Danny Green off the bench. And I still think he could have a big role in that regard, coming off the bench and supplying that veteran leadership. And maybe that even helps him a little bit stay healthier because he won't be playing as many big minutes. And, you have a guy like Thibault, Maxey, Milton, whoever, kind of take on more minutes and assume a bigger role. So I certainly don't think it's a done deal. I'm not super optimistic, but a lot of it's gonna depend on what other teams, how they view Danny Green.
I thought when they signed Dwight Howard, it was kind of like, what are you doing? He has certainly been the best backup to Embiid. However, do you go back down that road again, or do you now have to find another backup to Embiid?
I would be looking for more of a stretch five personally. I thought Dwight, quite frankly, really hurt them in the Atlanta series. And if I were Doc Rivers, I wouldn't have gone back to him in game 6 or 7. I don't think he was I think he was a negative. Quite frankly, I would have played Ben Simmons at the 5 and taken, and taken my chances with that. I would be looking for more of a stretch 5, a guy that fits better with Ben Simmons. I mean, we even saw like what Tony Bradley's going to be a free agent. We saw, he looked pretty darn good with Ben Simmons in the starting lineup when Joel Embiid is out. Do you maybe try to bring him back? Depending on what his market looks like and on what a team might be interested in, because Bradley fit in very well with Ben, and I thought Bradley's tried to expand his game a little bit after the 3-point line too. So maybe he could be a guy that could develop more into a stretch 5 kind of type of player. So yeah, I mean, I personally would be looking perhaps to move on from Dwight. If not move on from him, if you bring him back for the minimum, that's fine. It doesn't really hurt you, but I would still be looking for more of a stretch 5, and I'd be maybe trying to, get in Paul Reed's ear and tell him, hey, there could be minutes for you in that role if you, really come back this offseason focused and ready. Because I know that was Doc Rivers' concern, is that he didn't think Paul Reed was quite ready for that role. But, in all season he puts in some work. You never know. Maybe Paul Reed's that guy next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, of the guys, you got Isaiah Joe, Paul Reed, some guys who did get a lot of playing time. Does anybody kind of enter the rotation? I mean, I guess Korkmaz is kind of up in the air. So does Korkmaz go? Joe take that role? Some of the guys that maybe didn't play a lot, do you see them developing into role players?
I can certainly see Isaiah Joe pushing for rotational minutes next year. Definitely. The glimpses we saw of him, I love the shooting stroke. I love his complete. I think what him and Furkan both have is just that confidence that is let it go from anywhere, and they let it go fast. They have quick releases, and I think I think you kind of have your Furkan Korkmaz replacement in Isaiah Joe personally. And I think Isaiah Joe, quite frankly, gives you much more potential on the defensive end. And I think someone's going to pay Korkmaz. I really do. I mean, I don't know what team does it, but shooting. Every team wants and needs shooting. So I could see Korkmaz getting, making out okay in free agency and getting a deal to play somewhere. And also perhaps more of a guarantee role because his role really did fluctuate here while he was here. So, and I think it's an easy kind of thing to just go to Isaiah Joe and kind of make him the guy who takes that role over. And I like him. I think Joe's got a shot. I really do. I think that was a really good second-round pick, and I think he has a shot to be a rotational NBA player.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that the Sixers still lack. You know, when you look at a lot of these teams that are still playing, and Atlanta has it, is guys that just come off the bench in droves and they can shoot. And it's like they give the team 20, 25 minutes and they can shoot and they can just get themselves 3-4 attempts in a small volume in a small amount of time, and they can, you know, you see Herter who didn't even, people forget he didn't even start for this team. Hunter, who, it's funny, I had a guy call me today and anti-processor, hates him and says, look, the Hawks don't have any high draft picks. I said, Hunter was the 4th pick. Young was essentially the 3rd pick. I know they got him 5th, but Atlanta had the 3rd pick that year. They swapped for Doncic. They have the 6th pick in Gallinari, so they have a 4, 2 5s, and a 6 on the team, and that's just that group of guys. Herter's 19. I mean, that's a team that built that team with a lot of high draft choices. So, but they have a lot of guys who can do very versatile, shoot. I feel like the Sixers, other than Curry and Green, who's a very standstill guy, they still don't have like these guys that come off the bench and just shoot it.
Yeah, it's guys that just have that, again, that confidence. Like, with all due respect to Furkan Korkmaz, but like I wish that Seth Curry sometimes had Furkan Korkmaz's irrational confidence and just fire. I mean, you saw more of it in the playoffs. Give Seth a lot of credit for that. I thought he was way more aggressive in the playoffs and it showed. But yeah, and I just think like it keeps going back to me to shot creation. Daryl Morey pushed back on the fact that he didn't think there was a lack. I still think there is. I think when I look at this roster, really the only perimeter shot creator, to your earlier point, is Maxey. I mean, they really don't have guys that do that. And you look at Atlanta, they have Trae Young, they have Kevin Herter, they have Lou Williams, they have, even Gallinari to an extent. Like, they have guys that can create their own offense, and the Sixers don't have nearly enough of that. Tobias was decent at it at times, and Seth Curry, he still probably needs a screen most of the time to get open. So it's just, to not have a guy that can just take people off the dribble, whereas other teams that are succeeding have multiple guys that can do that. I think, to me, that's still the most glaring weakness for the Sixers, whether it's off the bench or in a starting lineup. I just don't think they have enough guys that create their own offense.
Yep, that's for sure. I agree with that. And even like Shake Milton, this is probably who he is now. What's this, his 3rd season where he's kind of just people forget, though, he was the 3rd or 4th leading scorer for this team in the regular season. I mean, you kind of wonder what's his role moving forward. Is he just a 13-point-a-game guy off the bench and then you can't utilize him in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play well. Frankly, just, he had one really big night in game 2, and that's about it. That's really all you saw from him in the playoffs. But he's still a guy I like. He's still a guy I think can play. It's weird, Mike. Like, confidence and everything, like, it's such a hell of a thing. Like, it comes and it goes. And I think with Shake, you saw when he was confident, he was really good. And then times when he kind of got down on himself, he wasn't so good. It's all about consistency. I mean, he's got to be way more consistent. But I do think he can absolutely fill in a role and like be, 15 points a game. I think actually his creation level to my, I think he was better this year during the regular season, at least, at doing that. And what killed him early was that his 3 wasn't going down for whatever reason. Second half, he shot it much better. But yeah, I think, again, I still think Shake is a guy that's going to get a look. I still think he gets a shot. And I think, Mike, like, this kind of is the biggest issue, is that they just have a lot of guys who I still think might be able to help them, but they do not have enough sure things. And I think that's the problem. So maybe you can maneuver and figure some things out to get more veteran players that what you're getting, night in and night out. Or you can keep kind of riding with these guys and try to hope that one of them figures it out and it clicks and they get consistent. But, it's really tough to be a contender trying to win a championship when you don't have enough solid guys who you just know what you're getting every night.
That's for sure. I want to get your opinion on this. I know you started this conversation off by suggesting that, that doesn't mean they're going to try to trade Ben Simmons. They're trying to build his value. But the whole point, to me anyway, we all have a different view of the process and why they went down that road and what it was supposed to be. For me, this was an organization that had apathy. Nobody cared. For 20 years after Iverson left, people cared even less than you could about any team, period. It was a business decision to say, we got to do something. It was a branding business decision more so than a on-court win titles. That's what they have to tell the fans. We got to win championships. They needed to create excitement about this team, right? They had to get people back buzzed, jazzed about the Philadelphia 76ers because nobody cared. Mission accomplished. We now care about this team. That being said, do you agree that this regular season became apathetic? It was, I'll only care when I get to the playoffs. Like, okay, I get it. They're the number one seed, blah, blah, blah. So with that said, can they bring this core back again and go through another apathetic 82-game regular season by saying, I've already seen Joel and Ben and Tobias and Seth Curry just get me to not even the first round of the playoffs. I want to see you in the second round of the playoffs. So as a business, not a basketball decision, can they bring Ben Simmons back?
Yeah, because listen, I get it, what you're saying, but at the same time, it would be bad business to make a move to trade Ben Simmons and not get the proper value in return. Because then you're hurting your team, and then instead of having a sleepy 82-game season where you're the 1 seed, you might have an up and down tumultuous season where you're like the 5th seed. You know what I mean? And that would be much worse, to me at least. So yeah, I get it. I get, you're right with the process and everything. And I think what the goal of that was, yeah, definitely business. And then also, like, they were in NBA purgatory. Like, they didn't, like, the only second round series they played is because Derrick Rose's knee exploded in the first round of that one series. Other than that, they were 6, 7, 8 seed, and they lost every year. It was not, like you said, it was apathy. No one cared. It wasn't fun. I still think, like, people are going to, because even if they bring back, they're going to make some changes. I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know if they're going to be big. I don't know if they're going to be small. But I still think there's going to be intrigue, because then if they bring Ben Simmons back, it's going to be people wanting to kind of either jump all over Ben Simmons, saying he still didn't improve, he still can't shoot, he still can't hit free throws, or people that are the defenders that are going to be like, see, they should have held, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's still drama. So I think that will be enough that it will keep people's interest. But how long that lasts, I don't know. But yeah, I do. If they go into this in the next season with mostly the same roster and bring Ben Simmons back, I do still think there will be plenty of intrigue, plenty of drama, and plenty of things for us to discuss and debate that'll keep the interest in the team up.
All right, Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. The Sixers offseason. By the way, it appears there has been a Joel Embiid sighting over in Margate. He is walking down Ventnor Avenue with his son Arthur, and it looks like his wife. I've met his wife a few times. Lovely lady. But it looks like they are down in Margate. So if anybody sees him, take a picture and send it to us. I know a couple pictures have already surfaced of him. He was by the Liberty gas station in Margate on Ventnor Avenue over there. So,
well, good for him.
My neck of the woods. They could be getting ready for Game 2 tonight. Instead, he's getting a sandwich at Robert's place. There you go.
Yeah.
Because I know he doesn't drink, right? So he's getting a Shirley Temple over at Robert's place. Get some wings, Joel. If you're listening, I'd get the wings if I were you. All right, Paul, we will catch up with you. Our Inside the Sixers has been great this year. The coverage has been fantastic. So we will be catching up with Paul when Sixers news, rumors, reports, all that happens. But this has been the final Inside the Sixers for this season. And awesome job, man.
I try my best, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
At Paul Hudrick, covers the Sixers for 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, man.
You got it.
All right, there's Paul, and the Inside the Sixers segment has been great with Paul. Those guys, Kevin, Paul, Jason, they did a tremendous job covering the Sixers in this tumultuous offseason ahead now. They will be on it. We will have them on.